Welcome to South Tyrol. This is where people from all over Europe, including Poland, come to ski. However, today's episode is not about skiing, but about driving here 1,200 kilometers from Poland in an electric car. Now, this may sound like a very specific scenario, but if you're planning an EV road trip and you have to drive across Poland, you may find this insightful as well. Also, if you're new to EVs, I'll tell you how to plan your travels, what's the BMW iX like to road trip in, and what's the cost of charging during journeys. So, what's it like to drive an EV from Poland to Italy? Lesson number one. Trust BMW's route planner. It may take you along a longer route, but it will pick faster and more reliable chargers. Now, I decided I know better because I have Google Maps and PlugShare, and I ended up losing 3 hours on 250 kilowatt chargers. To put it into perspective, BMW iX50 has 105 kilowatt hour batteries, so you'll spend around 2 hours on a 50 kilowatt charger to charge to a useful capacity. Now, in Poland, there is not much choice when it comes to DC chargers. I'd usually go with slightly slower Greenway than theoretically faster Orlen, because with the latter, you've got 50% chance it won't work and remote start won't solve the problem. Now, driving from Warsaw to Bolzano takes about 14-15 hours in an internal combustion engine car. You'll have to charge every 2 hours in an electric car, so by simple mathematics, it's clear you'll have to spend the night somewhere. In my case, it was Vienna. Which takes us to lesson number two. Just because Booking.com says a hotel has a destination charger, it doesn't mean the hotel actually manages the charging outlet or that you can reserve it. Email the reception and ask what kind of a connection they have, if you can reserve it, and if you need to bring your own cables. Sometimes hotels lease parking spaces from the city parking lot, and they may not be in charge of the charging points, which may be in some obscure charging network. Now, having recharged overnight, the trip from Vienna to Bolzano was a breeze because there are dozens of BMW charging partners, rapid chargers along the way. SatNav planned 2 stops about every 200 kilometers, which is very good because nature calls by this time. Now, the first stop was supposed to last about 50 minutes, and the second stop was supposed to be just a 5-minute squirt of electrons. However, at the first stop, the computer suggested only 35 minutes charging, and I spent almost an hour there because I went to lunch. And the computer cancelled the second stop because it wasn't needed. I just stopped for a great espresso on the Italian side. Now, having this many rapid chargers along the way means I wouldn't have to ask SatNav for help. I could just stop every time I have to go to the loo. This will take 10-15 minutes, which is enough to recharge this car from 20 to about 50%. Now, the speed limits in Austria and in Italy also worked to my advantage because I was driving between 100 and 110 kilometers per hour instead of the usual 130. And at slower speeds, the iX uses about 24-25 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers instead of 29-30 at 130 kilometers per hour. So the useful range from about 80 to 10% state of charge is about 250-300 kilometers, depending on how fast you go and depending on the weather. In my case, there was a lot of strong wind, and also the temperature was anywhere between slight sub-zero to about 4 or 5 plus degrees Celsius. And now let's talk the BMW iX. The car is comfortable and very well soundproofed, which means it can be difficult to judge the speed, and this could get expensive, so it's best to use assisted driving features, which in this car tend to die every couple of hours. This particular example. Now, at 2.5 tons, this car takes some getting used to when it comes to braking and turning. The acceleration is mind-bending, but you'll use it mainly for overtaking lorries, so you don't occupy the left lane. Unless, of course, you don't mind charging more often and spending more money. As far as driving is concerned, I don't feel much difference between the iX50 and the iX40. This one theoretically has adaptive suspension, but I can't tell the difference. The important thing is that this one's got a bigger battery. The iX definitely stands out on the streets, although it may not be for the reasons that BMW designers wanted to. In my opinion, this car has a bit of a split personality, because on the one hand it's a huge SUV for road trips, but on the other hand the boot only fits for carry-on suitcases. And I know if you're going somewhere for longer, you pack differently, but during these 6 days I was sleeping in 4 different places, so every time I had to unload and load the boot back again. Also, there is no frunk, so if you need to use your own Type 2 cable for overnight charging, you have to remember to put it back in the underfloor storage before you put everything else in the trunk. And in the city, the BMW iX is too wide for dense traffic and narrow European parking spaces. Also, something I noticed in the iX and the Mercedes-Benz EQS, these frameless windows roll down much lower when it's colder than the usual 2-3 centimeters. I suspect the electric motors apply more torque to break any ice, but you end up with the glass being dirty halfway, so it's difficult to see. Okay, and now let's see how much this trip really cost me. Back to the studio. It's 3 weeks later. I had to delay publishing of this episode by a week because BMW Charging roaming data came in on the 7th. Along the way, I had only some reference data from a Fastned charger which displays estimated cost for non-subscribers. And based on that estimate, as well as 27 kWh per 100 km average energy consumption, I calculated €18.50 for every 100 km traveled. Meanwhile, average petrol prices along my route were around €1.40. It's cheaper in Austria, but more expensive in Italy, somewhere in the middle in Germany. Assuming an SUV of comparable size would use around 10 liters per 100 km, that gives us €14 for every 100 km traveled. Even if we factor in overnight charging in hotels, the overall cost would be comparable to a petrol SUV at best. And charging takes time. However, when buying an EV, you can often take advantage of some charging subscription scheme. Thanks to a card offered by your car maker, you can charge in many different networks without having to worry about access. That's the basic form. You just get one bill at the end of the month and you're done. If you take out a subscription, charging may be much cheaper. These offers differ between brands and countries, but if you can't decide which EV you like best, perhaps the charging subscription plan may be the decider for you. Anyway, in the hopefully not so distant future, all chargers will have payment terminals, so having to pick the right network won't be a problem. With this test car, I was issued a BMW Charging card with Active and Ionity Plus subscriptions on it. For Polish clients, that's about €22 a month for the two, and they are free for the first year, but let's assume a year has passed and this is a monthly cost you have to factor in if you want cheaper rapid charging. How much cheaper? At the end of the Fastned session, I saw an estimate of €57, but the actual bill was €27, and that means €9 per 100 kilometers instead of 18.5. For €9, your petrol car will barely cover 65 kilometers. And now we get to the charging in hotels. Vienna charging cost about €5 per session, plus parking, but you would park at the hotel anyway, wouldn't you? In Bolzano, a charging spot was reserved for me for €20 a day. I was returning via Nuremberg, where charging would cost me €18, but as I was considering whether or not to drive for dinner, someone took the last available charging spot. My bad, I had to start the next day with a trip to a rapid charging station. So, for about €45, I had additional 900 kilometers range. On my way back, I also stopped for the night at my friend's place and I charged overnight for a bottle of wine and some souvenirs, but I also used their bathroom and ate their food, so I think we can call it even. The whole trip was 3,000 kilometers. That's Warsaw, Vienna, Bolzano, day of filming around Bolzano, Nuremberg, Wrocław, and Warsaw. I don't care how long and how fast you say you can drive, that's about 30 hours of actual driving. And on top of that, I spent 6 hours charging at rapid charging stations. That's a lot. Or is it? You see, out of the 6 hours of fast charging, I spent more than 3 hours in Poland and Czechia. So in fact, I charged only 3 hours to drive 2,000 kilometers across Austria, Italy, and Germany. And I'd imagine anyone would take breaks amounting to at least 3 hours when driving 2,000 kilometers. Never mind the location of the chargers and the surrounding infrastructure in Poland and Czechia. Ionity and Fastnet offer several charging outlets. If one of them is down, it's usually temporarily for a restart or something, and it's back up in a couple of minutes. During the entire trip, I saw 3 other cars charging. The total cost of charging during this trip, including the 45 euro at hotels, was 207 euro, which breaks down to 7 euro per 100 kilometers. An interesting observation, driving around Poland, I got much higher energy consumption than in the other 4 countries. In Poland, you're always braking for the truck overtaking where it's not supposed to overtake, and then you're pushed by someone who's tailgating. I got lower energy consumption on the German Autobahn, where for a few times I took advantage of the unrestricted sections. So, electromobility needs infrastructure and sensible drivers. And what do you think about my results? Perhaps you drive an EV and you can share some of your experience. Drop me a comment below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.